Hi everyone, welcome to or back to episode 22 for She Who Hears. As always, I want to try to keep these episodes short and sweet for you guys, but I'm going to let God do as He sees fit for this one, as always. I'm going to start with a little story from my childhood. I remember when I was younger, before I got my glasses, that my vision started to blur. And in my young mind, I didn't know what was happening. I thought it was some temporary condition or something that would just go away eventually. But the longer I let that drag out, I noticed that my vision was getting worse. So I finally told my mom, and she eventually took me to an eye doctor. And of course, I had to sit behind that machine that had to flip through lenses to see what would work best for my vision. And I remember how each passing lens went from horrible to just barely blurry to the perfect prescription that was for me. And blurred vision reminded me of Saul before he became Apostle Paul in Acts 9, verses 3 through 9. As he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice say to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" Verse 5, "Who are you, Lord?" Saul asked. "I am Jesus whom you are persecuting," he replied. "Now get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do." The men traveling with Saul stood there speechless. They heard the sound but did not see anyone. Saul got up from the ground, but when he opened his eyes, he could see nothing. So they led him by the hand into Damascus. For 3 days he was blind and did not eat or drink anything. When God made me think about Saul before he became the Apostle Paul, Saul's vision was blurred to what he thought was correct. If you don't know the story of Saul, he was someone who would kill the disciples of the Lord. And despite being a religious man, he thought in his blurred vision and his misunderstanding that he was doing something correct. One would probably think that maybe he was even proud of doing that. He thought he was doing something that was right in his own sight. And so much so that he was willing to go all the way to Damascus to kill more Christians. But Jesus made Saul have an encounter with him to hear him say that he was not just persecuting his disciples, but he was persecuting Jesus himself because they are part of him. So God made Saul's vision shift. His mind and vision were blurred all over again. God made Saul blind for 3 days, and in those days I could imagine that shift for him must have done something intentionally. I could imagine how he felt a heavy conviction of realizing that he was actually doing something that was not well in God's sight. And being blind as he was reaching Damascus, his entire mission had to change. He was going on a mission to kill more Christians, but after his encounter with Jesus, he had to understand that his mission was not for the mission of the people. It was for the mission that God set him up for the kingdom of heaven. He was going to become a new apostle. And that new light must have been very sensitive for him. When you open your eyes and adjust to a new light that hits your eyes, you have to slowly adjust to what God wants you to see. You can't just ignore or go back to what you once thought in your sight was correct. After you have an encounter with Jesus, your vision is blurred by what you thought was right, but God will blur your vision all over again, so you can understand that what was right in your sight is not right. You have to adjust your vision to the newness that God wants you to see. And it will be confusing, but God's not a God of confusion. It will be uncomfortable, but God will make it worth it. And no one can convince me that Saul was not confused and uncomfortable in this shift that he was experiencing before he became the Apostle Paul. His blurred vision was temporary. and it was uncomfortable, but that's why God kept people with him, so they could lead him in the right direction. Saul became a partner with God to make his kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. And he set the right people around him to guide him through the process as he was blinded. Keep in mind who God wants to keep around you and who God wants to pull you away from, so that you cannot continue to be blinded by what you think is right or what others think is right. And I will leave that with you all. Thank you.